Ji-woo stepped off the transport shuttle and felt the artificial gravity of Station Kira's pull at her boots. The station was massive, larger than any structure she had ever seen. Through the viewport, she could see it stretching in all directions, a city floating in space. This was the Galactic Military Academy, where warriors from across 200 different species came to learn the art of war. She picked up her single bag and followed the stream of new cadets into the processing center. Around her, beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like her. Others had 4, 6, or even 8 limbs. Some had scales, others had shells, and a few seemed to be made of something she couldn't quite identify. Ji-woo kept her face calm, but inside, her heart was racing. She was very far from Earth. The processing took 3 hours. She received her cadet uniform, her room assignment, and a datapad loaded with Academy regulations. A bored-looking official, some kind of reptilian species with purple scales, barely glanced at her as he pushed the items across the counter. When she finally found her dormitory, she discovered her roommate was already there. "You must be Ji-woo," the woman said in perfect standard. She was human, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. "I'm Hyen. Looks like we're the only 2 humans in this wing." "How many of us are there total?" Ji-woo asked, setting her bag on the empty bed. 5 in our entire cohort, out of 200 cadets. Hyen sat down on her own bed and looked at Ji-woo seriously. "Listen, I've been here for 2 days already, and I need to tell you something. Keep your head down. Don't draw attention. The other species already think we're weak." Ji-woo didn't respond immediately. She unpacked her few belongings, placing them carefully in the small locker beside her bed. At the bottom of her bag was a worn photograph of her grandmother, dressed in the traditional uniform of her martial arts school. Ji-woo touched it gently before closing the locker. The next morning, orientation began in the Grand Hall. Ji-woo had never seen so many different life forms in one place. The hall itself was designed to accommodate everyone, with seats of various sizes and configurations. She and Hyen found spots near the back, next to 3 other humans. They, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes. Mira, who had the lean build of a runner. And Taemin, who looked barely old enough to be here. The instructor who took the stage was enormous. She stood at least 3 meters tall, with a body covered in dark chitinous plates and 4 arms that ended in sharp points. Her species was called Velcrum, according to the information on Ji-woo's datapad. "I am Instructor Velsha," the massive creature announced, her voice booming through the hall without any need for amplification. "For 300 years, this academy has produced the finest warriors in the galaxy. You are here because your governments believe you might have what it takes to join their ranks. Most of you will fail." She let that sink in before continuing. "Modern warfare is one with technology, strategy, and superior firepower. You will learn to operate energy weapons, plasma blades, gravitational manipulators, and powered exoskeletons. You will learn to pilot combat vessels and coordinate orbital strikes. You will become living weapons enhanced by the finest technology our civilization can provide." For the next 2 hours, Velsha outlined the training program. Ji-woo listened carefully, taking notes on her datapad. Everything seemed focused on technology and equipment. There was weapons training, vehicle operation, tactical systems, and advanced combat gear. But something was missing. When Velsha finally asked for questions, Ji-woo raised her hand. Hyen grabbed her arm and whispered urgently, "What are you doing?" But Ji-woo kept her hand up, Velsha's dark eyes fixed on her. "Yes, the human." Ji-woo stood up. Her voice was steady. "Instructor, I didn't see any hand-to-hand combat training in the curriculum. What happens if our weapons fail or we're fighting in close quarters?" The hall erupted. Some species made clicking sounds. Others produced huffing noises that might have been laughter. A few started making sounds Jiwoo couldn't even identify. Hyan had buried her face in her hands. Velsha raised one of her forearms, and the noise died down. She looked at Jiwoo with something that might have been amusement. Hand-to-hand combat? That is a relic of primitive warfare. In modern combat, if you are close enough to touch your enemy, you have already failed. We fight with precision weapons from optimal distances. The idea of wrestling with an opponent like some animal is beneath us. More laughter rippled through the hall. Jiwoo felt heat rising to her face, but she kept her expression neutral. She sat down without another word. Any other questions? Velsha asked, scanning the room. No one else raised their hand after orientation. The 5 humans gathered in a quiet corner of the station's recreation area. They put a hand on Jiwoo's shoulder. That took guts. Stupid, maybe, but guts. She's right, though, Taemin said quietly. I looked through the entire curriculum. Nothing about close combat. It's all guns and tech. That's how they fight, Myra pointed out. We're not on Earth anymore. We need to adapt. Hyen shook her head. We need to survive. And that means not making ourselves targets. The other species already think humans are soft and weak. Let's not give them more reasons to doubt us. That night, Jiwoo couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her grandmother's words. Technology can fail. Your body, your mind, your training, these are weapons that cannot be taken from you. After an hour of tossing and turning, she got up and pulled on her training clothes. The station had multiple training facilities for cadets. Most were locked at night, but she found one older room that had been left open. It was dusty and clearly hadn't been used in a while. Perfect.G-Woo started with basic forms, the movements her grandmother had taught her as a child. Punch, block, step, turn. Her body remembered the patterns even after months without practice. She moved through the forms slowly at first, then faster, feeling her muscles warm and stretch. She didn't hear the door open. She only realized someone was watching when she completed a form and turned to begin another. A figure stood in the doorway, one of the Velcrum cadets she had seen during orientation. Your movements are strange, the Velcrum said. His standard was heavily accented but clear. What purpose do they serve? Training, Jiwoo replied simply. For what? Dancing? There was no mockery in his voice, only genuine curiosity. For fighting. The Velcrum tilted his head, his chitinous plate shifting slightly. You practice to fight without weapons? Without armor? Yes. He stood there for a long moment, watching her. Finally, he made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sigh. Humans are very strange, he said, and left Jiwoo turn back to her forms. Let them think she was strange. Let them underestimate her. She would show them what a human could do when the time came. Her grandmother had taught her patience, discipline, and that true strength came from within. She trained for another hour before returning to her room. Hyan was still asleep. Jiwoo climbed into her bed and finally felt tired enough to rest. Tomorrow, the real training would begin, and Jiwoo would be ready. 3 weeks of training had taught Jiwoo many things about the academy. She learned that the Velcrum were incredibly strong, but relied heavily on their armor. She learned that the Orthane, with their 8 flexible limbs, were amazing with complex machinery, but moved slowly in combat. She learned that most species had specialized in one type of warfare and stuck to it religiously. She also learned that humans were considered the weakest species in the cohort. During physical conditioning, the humans struggled to keep up with beings who had evolved on high-gravity worlds or who had natural advantages in strength and endurance. During weapons training, their reaction times were average at best. The other cadets weren't cruel about it, but Jiwoo could see the pity in their eyes. The humans were trying their best. The best might not be good enough. Today was different. Today was the first major assessment. Combat Evaluation Day. Velsia announced to the assembled cadets in the main training hall. Each of you will face a standard military combat dummy. These machines are programmed with the fighting techniques of 50 different species. Their bodies are reinforced with the same alloys we use in ship hulls. They can withstand direct plasma fire and keep functioning. Behind Velsia, a dozen large cylindrical pods stood in a row. Each one contained a combat dummy in standby mode. The machines were humanoid in basic shape, but clearly artificial, with smooth metal surfaces and glowing sensor arrays where eyes might be. You may use any weapon from your standard kit, Velsia continued. Your goal is to disable or destroy the dummy within 5 minutes. This test determines your combat readiness level and affects your future training assignments. Those who fail will be reassigned to support roles. Support roles. Ji-woo knew what that meant. It was the Academy's polite way of saying you weren't good enough to be a real warrior. The testing began. One by one, cadets entered the pods. Through the transparent walls, Ji-woo watched them fight. A Velcrum cadet named Thurn used an energy pike to smash his dummy into pieces in under 2 minutes. The crowd cheered. An Orthane student called Kix used gravitational pulses to tear her dummy apart joint by joint with terrifying precision. The humans went next. Day used his plasma rifle and managed to disable his dummy with sustained fire, though it took him nearly 4 minutes. Mira was fast, dodging and striking with a plasma blade until she finally severed enough critical components. Taemin struggled, but eventually succeeded. Hyeon passed with time to spare using textbook techniques. Then it was Ji-woo's turn. She walked to her assigned pod and stepped inside. The transparent walls sealed behind her. Across from her, the combat dummy activated, its sensors glowing red. On the wall outside the pod, Ji-woo could see her weapon rack, plasma rifle, plasma blade, energy shield, and various other tools of destruction. She didn't reach for any of them. Instead, Ji-woo walked to the center of the pod and dropped into a ready stance, hands empty, feet shoulder-width apart. She took a deep breath and nodded to the control operator. The training hall went silent. Cadet Ji-woo, Velsia's voice boomed through the speakers. You must select the weapon. No thank you, instructor, Ji-woo replied calmly. This is not optional. The test requires that I disable or destroy the dummy. Ji-woo interrupted, surprising herself with her own boldness. It doesn't say I must use weapons. I checked the regulations. There was a long pause. Ji-woo could see Velsia outside the pod, her chitinous plate shifting in what might have been irritation. But the instructor didn't stop the test. Academy protocols were strict. If the regulations didn't forbid it, it was allowed. Proceed, Velsia said finally. The combat dummy came alive. It moved fast, faster than Ji-woo expected. It closed the distance in 2 long strides and threw a punch that would have shattered her skull if it connected. Ji-woo slipped to the side, the metal fist passing centimeters from her ear. She could feel the wind from the strike. The dummy didn't pause. It spun, launching a kick at her midsection. Ji-woo stepped into the kick instead of away, getting inside its range. She struck the dummy's knee joint with her palm, not trying to damage it, but testing its structure. The joint flexed. She had found the weak point. The dummy grabbed for her with both hands. Ji-woo dropped low, swept one of its legs, and rolled away before it could pin her. She came up in a crouch, breathing hard but focused. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Watch, learn, adapt. The machine came again. This time, Ji-woo was ready. She dodged 2 strikes, then caught the dummy's arm mid-punch. Using its own momentum, she twisted, putting her whole body into a throw that would have broken a human's arm. The dummy crashed into the pod wall, but recovered instantly. Ji-woo didn't give it time to reset. She was on it before it could fully stand, driving her elbow into the sensor array on its head. Sparks flew. The dummy swung wildly, and she ducked under the blow, moving behind it. She jumped onto its back, wrapping her legs around its torso and her arm around its neck joint. The dummy tried to shake her off, spinning and slamming backward into the wall. Ji-woo held on, her muscles screaming. She hooked her feet together and squeezed, applying pressure to the neck joint while pulling back with all her strength. Metal began to groan. The dummy reached back, trying to grab her, but she shifted her weight and pulled harder. She thought of her grandmother, of the 1,000 times she had practiced this technique on training partners who outweighed her by 50 kilos. She thought of every early morning, every sore muscle, every moment she had been told that a small woman couldn't possibly overpower a larger opponent. With a sound like thunder, the dummy's torso separated from its lower half. Ji-woo rode it down as it fell, hydraulic fluid spraying across the pod floor. She rolled clear and stood up, chest heaving, hands trembling with adrenaline. The dummy's upper half twitched once, then went still. Its lower half collapsed in the opposite direction. The timer showed 47 seconds. For a long moment, there was absolute silence in the training hall. 200 cadets from 200 different species stared at the human girl standing over the broken machine. Her uniform soaked with hydraulic fluid, her hands empty of any weapons. Then Hyen started clapping. It was slow at first, just her hands coming together in steady rhythm. Then Dae joined in. Then Mira and Tamin. Then, incredibly, some of the other species began to applaud as well. Not all of them, many looked shocked or confused, but enough that the sound grew into something real. Ji-woo walked out of the pod on shaky legs. Velsha stood there, all 4 of her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Explain," the instructor demanded. "I used leverage and targeting," Ji-woo said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The dummy was stronger than me, faster than me, but it had weak points in its joints and neck connection. I used its own force against it and applied pressure to the weakest structural point until it failed. You destroyed Academy property. The test was to disable or destroy the dummy, instructor. I chose destroy." Velsha stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then the massive Velcrum made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You understand that you will be cleaning hydraulic fluid for a week as punishment for the mess you made?" "Yes, instructor. And you will write a full report on your technique and submit it to the Combat Analysis Department." "Yes, instructor." Velsha leaned down, bringing her face close to Ji-woo's. "That was the most primitive, inefficient, and absurd combat display I have seen in 30 years of teaching." She paused. "It was also effective. You pass." Ji-woo felt her knees go weak with relief. She had done it. She had proved that a human could succeed here, that her grandmother's teachings had value even among the stars. As the other cadets filed out for their next class, Thurn, the Velcrum who had destroyed his dummy so efficiently, approached her. "I want a rematch," he said. Ji-woo looked up at him, at his armored body and his 4 powerful arms. "A rematch? You and me. A proper duel. You got lucky with the machine, but against a real warrior, your primitive techniques will fail." Before Ji-woo could respond, Velsha's voice cut through the conversation. "If Cadet Thurm wishes to challenge you to a sanctioned duel, the Academy permits it. Do you accept?" Ji-woo thought about her grandmother, about the photograph in her locker, about every person who had ever doubted her. She thought about what she came here to prove. "I accept," she said. News of the duel spread through the Academy like fire through dry grass. By evening, Everyone knew that the human who had torn apart a combat dummy with her bare hands would face Thurn, one of the most skilled Velcrum cadets in sanctioned combat. The betting pool started immediately. Ji Woo sat in the small recreation room the humans had claimed as their own space. Day was pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly. Myra sat cross-legged on the floor, her face worried. Taemin kept checking his datapad, reading something over and over. Hyan stood by the window, arms crossed. "You can't actually be going through with this," Hyan said. "Not for the first time." "I already accepted," Ji-woo replied. She was cleaning her hands with a cloth, trying to get the last of the hydraulic fluid from under her fingernails. "I can't back out now." "Yes, you can. You say you're injured. You say you didn't understand what you were agreeing to. You say anything, except that you're going to fight a Velcrum in powered armor with your bare hands." "She won't be alone," Day said suddenly. He stopped pacing and looked at Ji-woo. "We trained together. All of us. We're the only humans here. That means we're a team." "A team," Myra repeated slowly, then nodded. "Day's right. What do you know how to do, Ji-woo?" Ji-woo thought about it. "My grandmother taught me a martial art from Earth. It focuses on using an opponent's strength against them, on finding weak points, on never fighting force with force." "I know boxing," Day offered. "And wrestling." "My father was a coach." "I trained with weapons," Myra said. "Staffs, blades. Mostly forms and patterns, but I understand movement and distance." "I studied tactics," Taemin added quietly, finally looking up from his datapad. "Not combat, but strategy. How to win when you're outmatched." Hyan turned from the window. "And I know military combatives. The basic stuff they teach in Earth's armed forces. Hand to hand for when everything else fails." She walked over to Ji-woo. "I still think this is crazy. But if you're doing it, we help." For the next 4 days, the 5 humans trained together whenever they weren't in official classes. They found empty training rooms, unused corridors, anywhere they could practice without drawing attention. Ji-woo taught them what her grandmother had taught her about balance and leverage. They showed them how to throw proper punches and how to grapple. Mira helped them understand footwork and distance. Taemin watched and analyzed, pointing out patterns and weaknesses. During their official classes, Ji-woo studied Thurn carefully. The Velcrum was strong and confident, moving through the training exercises with practiced efficiency. His powered armor fit him perfectly, enhancing his already considerable strength. His energy pike was an extension of his body, striking with precision and power. But Ji-woo also noticed other things. Thurn favored his right side. His armor had thicker plating in front but thinner joints in back. His attacks were powerful but followed predictable patterns. He fought like someone who had never lost, who had never needed to adapt or improvise. On the 3rd night of training, Ji-woo visited the Academy's historical archives. The archives were open to all cadets, though few used them. Most were too busy with their current training to worry about ancient history. Ji-woo, however, had questions. She spent hours searching through records of galactic warfare. What she found surprised her. 1,000 years ago, close-quarters combat had been common. Species fought hand-to-hand, claw-to-claw, in brutal personal conflicts. The archives contained recordings of these battles, and they were horrifying in their intensity. Then, gradually, technology advanced. Weapons became more powerful and precise. Armor became stronger. Warfare moved to greater distances. Within a few centuries, the idea of actually touching your enemy in combat became seen as primitive and unnecessary. Why risk yourself in close combat when you could kill from a safe distance? The last species to practice serious hand-to-hand combat were called the Kethrani. They had been warriors of legendary skill, capable of defeating enemies twice their size with nothing but their bodies and their training. According to the records, the Kethrani had been wiped out in a war 500 years ago. Their combat techniques died with them. G-Wu downloaded everything she could find about the Kethrani. Their fighting style was different from what her grandmother had taught her, but the principles were similar. Use your opponent's strength against them. Target weak points. Move efficiently. Never waste energy. She stayed in the archives until the station's night cycle ended, and the lights began to brighten for morning. When she finally returned to her room, Hyen was awake. Couldn't sleep? Hyen asked. Research, Ji-Woo said, setting down her datapad. Find anything useful? Maybe. The galaxy forgot how to fight up close. They've been using weapons and armor for so long that nobody remembers how to defend against someone who doesn't care about distance. Hyen was quiet for a moment. That's our advantage, isn't it? We're so primitive that we're actually ahead. Ji-Woo smiled. Something like that. The day before the duel, Instructor Velsha called Ji-Woo to her office. The office was sparse and functional, like everything about the Velcrum. Velsha stood by the window, looking out at the stars. You may withdraw from the duel, the instructor said without turning around. No one will think less of you. Everyone will think less of me, Ji-Woo replied. Better that than being injured. Or killed. Velsha turned to face her. Thurn is not like the training dummy. He will adapt. He will think. And he is very, very dangerous. So am I. Velsha's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement or frustration. You are brave. I respect that. But bravery without wisdom is just another word for foolishness. My grandmother used to say that the brave don't live forever. But the cautious don't live at all, Ji-Woo said. Your grandmother sounds like she was Kethrani, Velsha said, surprising Ji-Woo. I saw you accessing the archives. The Kethrani were great warriors. They were also extinct. There is a lesson there. The lesson is that they were wiped out by superior technology, not by superior warriors, Ji-Woo countered. If they had faced their enemies hand to hand, they might still be here. Velsha studied her for a long moment. Perhaps. Or perhaps they would have died sooner. She walked to her desk and picked up a small device. This is a shield generator. Wear it during the duel. It won't make you invincible, but it might keep Thurn from killing you on the first strike. Ji-Woo wanted to refuse to say she didn't need the help. But that would be pride talking, not wisdom. She took the device and clipped it to her belt. Thank you, instructor. Don't thank me yet. You might still lose, badly. That night, the 5 humans gathered one last time. They didn't train. Instead, they sat together in their recreation room and talked. They talked about Earth, about their families, about why they had come to the academy in the first place. They talked about everything except the dual dot. As the night cycle deepened, the others eventually went to their rooms. Ji-Woo sat alone, looking at the photograph of her grandmother. In the picture, her grandmother stood in the training hall where Ji-Woo had learned everything she knew. The old woman's face was stern but kind, her posture perfect. Her eyes sharp with intelligence and humor. I hope I make you proud, Ji-Woo whispered to the photograph. She thought about all the training. All the lessons, all the times her grandmother had pushed her to try harder. To be better, to never give up. She thought about the look on her grandmother's face when Ji-Woo had told her about the academy. About the chance to go to the stars and prove that humans belonged among the galactic powers. Her grandmother had smiled and said, "Go show them what we're made of." Tomorrow, Ji-Woo would do exactly that. She put the photograph away carefully and lay down on her bed. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, she dreamed of her grandmother's training hall, of the smell of wooden floors and the sound of bare feet moving through familiar forms. In her dream, her grandmother watched her practice and nodded with approval. When Ji-Woo woke, It was morning. The day of the duel had arrived. The arena was completely full. Ji Woo had never seen so many beings gathered in one place. Every cadet in the academy seemed to be there, along with many of the instructors and staff. The arena itself was a large circular space with high walls and a reinforced floor, designed to handle the most intense combat training. Today, it would host something the academy hadn't seen in decades. A formal duel between cadets. Ji Woo stood in the preparation room, wearing her standard training uniform. The shield generator Velsha had given her was clipped to her belt, a small blue light indicating it was active. She stretched slowly, working through the warm-up routine her grandmother had taught her. Her muscles felt loose and ready. Her mind was calm. The door opened and Hyene entered, followed by the others. They didn't say anything at first. They just stood there, 4 humans looking at the 5th, all of them knowing what was about to happen. "Remember what Taemin found," they said finally. "Thurn's armor has to recalibrate every time he changes direction. There's a 0.3-second delay. And he telegraphs his pike strikes," Myra added. "He drops his shoulder right before he thrusts. Don't try to win in the first minute," Taemin said quietly. "Let him get confident. Let him make mistakes." Hyene stepped forward and put her hands on Ji Woo's shoulders. "You've got this. You're faster than him, smarter than him, and you've been training for this your whole life. He's just been training for a week." Ji Woo smiled. "I'll try not to embarrass you all." "Too late for that," they said with a grin. "You're already the crazy human who fights without weapons. Might as well go all the way." A chime sounded. It was time. Ji Woo walked through the tunnel that led to the arena floor. The noise hit her like a physical thing. Hundreds of voices calling out in dozens of languages. Some were cheering. Some were making sounds she couldn't identify. As she stepped into the light, she saw the massive crowd surrounding the arena on all sides, filling the observation decks that ringed the space. On the opposite side of the arena, Thurn emerged from his own tunnel. He was fully armored, his powered exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. In his hands, he carried his energy pike, the weapon crackling with barely contained power. He looked like a god of war, massive and unstoppable. Ji Woo looked like a human woman in a training uniform. Instructor Velsha stood at the center of the arena, her voice amplified for all to hear. "This is a sanctioned duel between Cadet Thurn of the Velcrum and Cadet Ji Woo of the humans. The duel will continue until one combatant yields, is incapacitated, or the officials declare a winner. Lethal force is not permitted." "Do both combatants understand the terms?" "I understand," Thurn said, his voice distorted slightly by his armor speakers. "I understand," Ji Woo replied. "Then take your positions." They walked to opposite sides of a circle marked on the arena floor. Ji Woo could feel hundreds of eyes on her. She could hear the betting numbers being called out, the odds heavily favoring Thurn. 10-1, 15-1, 20-1 in some cases. She pushed it all away. None of that mattered. Right now, there was only her, Thurn, and the space between them. Velsha raised one of her 4 arms. "Begin!" Thurn charged immediately. His powered armor made him fast, faster than his size suggested. He crossed half the arena in seconds, his energy pike aimed directly at Ji Woo's chest. The crowd roared. Ji Woo didn't run. She waited, watching his approach, measuring the distance. At the last possible moment, she sidestepped. The pike missed her by centimeters, close enough that she felt the heat from its energy field. Thurn thundered past, his momentum carrying him several meters before he could stop. 0.3-second delay to recalibrate. Ji Woo counted it in her head. 1, 2, 3. Thurn spun and attacked again, this time with a horizontal sweep of the pike. Ji Woo dropped low, the weapon passing over her head. She rolled to the side as Thurn's foot came down where she had been crouching. The arena floor cracked under the impact of his armor boot. "Stand and fight," Thurn shouted. Frustrated. Ji Woo said nothing. She was breathing steadily, watching him, learning. His attacks were powerful but followed clear patterns. Pike thrust, horizontal sweep, overhead strike. Thrust, sweep, strike. Like a training exercise he had practiced 1,000 times. Thurn came at her again, and again Ji Woo evaded. The crowd was getting restless. Some were booing. They had come to see a fight, not a chase. But Ji Woo wasn't running. She was studying. On his 6th attack, she saw what she was looking for. Thurn raised his pike for an overhead strike, and his shoulder dropped slightly. Just like Myra had said. In that split second, his armpit was exposed, where the thinner joint material allowed his arm to move freely. Ji Woo stepped inside his guard instead of away. The pike came down, but she was too close for him to hit her with it. She drove her palm upward into the exposed joint of his armor. The shield generator on her belt flared as his armor's energy field tried to repel her. But she had hit at an angle the shields weren't designed to stop. Thurn's arm seized up. The armor's joint locked, and the pike clattered to the floor. The crowd gasped. Thurn roared and tried to grab her with his other hand. But Ji Woo was already moving. She swept his legs, using a technique her grandmother had drilled into her 1,000 times. Thurn, off balance and with one arm locked, fell forward. Ji Woo rolled aside as his massive armored body crashed into the floor. Before he could recover, she was on his back. Her arms wrapped around his helmet, her legs hooked under his chest plate. She wasn't trying to choke him. The armor prevented that. Instead, she was targeting the helmet's locking mechanism, the weak point where the helmet attached to the rest of the suit. Thurn pushed himself up with his good arm, trying to shake her off. He slammed backward into the arena floor, trying to crush her beneath his weight. The shield generator kept her from being seriously hurt, but each impact drove the air from her lungs. She held on. Her fingers found the locking mechanism. She pulled, twisted, and felt something give way. The helmet loosened. Thurn realized what she was doing and panicked, thrashing wildly. But it was too late. Ji Woo wrenched the helmet free and rolled away, taking it with her. Thurn stood up, one arm still locked, his head now exposed. He looked at her with his natural eyes, dark and wide with shock. Around them, the arena had gone completely silent. "Yield," Ji Woo said quietly. "No," Thurn growled. He charged at her again, this time without his weapon, trying to use his sheer mass to overwhelm her. Ji Woo sidestepped, stuck out her foot, and used his own momentum to send him sprawling. He crashed into the arena wall with a sound like thunder. When he tried to get up, his locked arm betrayed him. He fell again, and again. Finally, breathing hard, covered in sweat, Thurn stayed down. He looked up at Ji Woo, who stood a few meters away, still holding his helmet. "I yield," he said. The arena exploded with noise. Some were cheering, some were clicking or chirping or making whatever sounds their species made for excitement. Many looked shocked, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Velsha stepped forward, raising her arms for silence. "The victor is Cadet Ji Woo." Ji Woo walked over to where Thurn sat on the floor. She held out his helmet. After a long moment, he took it. "Your armor is good," she said, "but it has weaknesses." "Everything has weaknesses," Thurn replied. He looked at her with something that might have been respect. "I didn't expect. I thought humans were weak." "We are weak," Ji Woo said, offering him her hand. "That's why we learned to fight smart instead of strong." Thurn stared at her hand for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached up and took it. Ji Woo helped pull him to his feet. The crowd's noise grew even louder. As the officials worked to unlock Thurn's armor joint. Ji-woo looked up at the observation decks. She saw Hyen, Dae, Myra, and Taemin jumping and cheering. She saw Velsha, arms crossed, mandibles clicking in what might have been approval dot, and for just a moment, Ji-woo swore she could feel her grandmother watching, somewhere far away across the stars, smiling with pride. The days following the duel were strange for Ji-woo. Everywhere she went in the academy, cadets stared at her, some with respect, some with curiosity, and a few with what looked like fear. She was no longer just another human struggling to keep up. She was the cadet who had defeated a Velcrum, warrior without using any weapons. The betting pools had cost some people a lot of money. 2 weeks after the duel, Ji-woo was called to Instructor Velsha's office again. This time, when she entered, she found several other instructors there as well. A tall Orthane with silver skin, a small crystalline being that floated near the ceiling, and a species she didn't recognize that looked like it was made of flowing water held in a containment suit. "Sit," Velsha said, gesturing to a chair. Ji-woo sat, suddenly nervous. Had she done something wrong? Was there some rule she had broken without knowing it? The Orthane instructor spoke first, his voice like wind chimes. "We have been reviewing combat data from recent military operations across the galaxy. Pirate raids, boarding actions, insurgent attacks in confined spaces. Do you know what we found?" "No, sir," Ji-woo replied. "We found that our forces are extremely vulnerable in close-quarters situations. Ship corridors, underground facilities, anywhere our heavy weapons and armor become liabilities rather than assets. We lose more soldiers to these encounters than we care to admit." The crystalline being pulsed with light, and a translated voice came from a speaker on the wall. "Your demonstration against the combat dummy and against Cadet Dunn has made us reconsider our assumptions. Perhaps we have become too dependent on technology. Perhaps there is value in older methods." Velsha leaned forward. "We want you to develop a close-quarters combat program for the Academy. Something that can be taught to cadets from different species, adapted to their unique physiologies. You would work with other instructors, design the curriculum, and eventually teach it yourself." Ji-woo felt her heart racing. "Me? Instructor, I'm just a first-year cadet. I barely know how this place works." "You know how to fight without weapons," the watery being said through its translator. "That is what we need. Not another weapons expert. We have hundreds of those. We need someone who understands combat at its most basic level." "I can't do this alone," Ji-woo said carefully. "If you want a real program, I'll need help." "From the other humans?" Velsha's mandibles clicked. "You want to bring in more first-year cadets?" "I want to bring in the only people here who still remember how to fight hand-to-hand. Hyen knows military combatives. Dae understands grappling and wrestling. Myra knows movement and weapons forms. Taemin understands tactics and adaptation. Together, we can build something that works." The instructors looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Finally, Velsha spoke. "Very well. You and your human team will develop the program. You have 1 month to create a basic curriculum and demonstrate it to us. If it's acceptable, it becomes an official academy course." 1 month. Ji-woo nodded. "We'll be ready." The next 4 weeks were the hardest of Ji-woo's life. She and the other humans worked during every free moment, designing exercises, creating training methods, figuring out how to teach beings with completely different bodies how to fight without weapons. The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to teach human martial arts and started thinking about principles instead. Don't fight force with force. Target weak points. Use momentum against opponents. Stay balanced. These ideas worked regardless of whether you had 2 legs or 8, whether you had hands or claws or tentacles. They tested their ideas on each other first. They worked with Ji-woo to develop grappling techniques that could work for species with different limb configurations. Mira created footwork drills that adapted to beings with different centers of gravity. Taemin designed tactical scenarios that forced students to think creatively instead of relying on superior equipment. Word got around about what they were doing. Some cadets were curious. A few asked if they could join the practice sessions. Thurn was the first non-human to ask. "I want to learn," he said simply when he approached Ji-woo in the training hall. "You defeated me because I didn't understand your methods. That won't happen again." Ji-woo studied him. The Velcrum stood tall, his pride clearly wounded, but his determination genuine. "It's not easy, and it will feel strange at first." "Good. Easy things don't make you stronger." Thurn proved to be a dedicated student. His natural strength, combined with the leverage techniques Ji-woo taught him, made him incredibly dangerous at close range. Other Velcrum cadets saw him training and joined as well. Then some Orthane cadets asked to participate. Then more. By the end of the month, Ji-woo's informal training sessions had 30 regular participants from 15 different species. The demonstration for the instructors was scheduled in the main arena. Ji-woo stood before the assembled faculty and explained the program's philosophy. Then she and her team showed what they had developed. HYEON demonstrated basic defensive positions and how to protect vital areas regardless of body type. They showed grappling techniques adapted for beings with different numbers of limbs. Myra performed weapon retention drills that taught students how to disarm opponents without getting hurt. Taemin presented tactical scenarios where close quarters combat provided advantages over ranged weapons. Then Ji-woo invited Thurn to the floor. Together, they performed a demonstration of the techniques in action. Thurn, now trained in close quarters methods, was a completely different fighter than he had been during their duel. He was still strong, but now he was also smart, using his armor's weight as an advantage rather than a limitation, targeting gaps in an opponent's defense with precision. When they finished, the arena was quiet. Ji-woo looked up at the instructors and waited. Velsha stood. "Your program is approved. Starting next term, close quarters combat will be offered as an elective course for all cadets. Cadet Ji-woo, Cadet Hyein, Cadet Dae, Cadet Myra, and Cadet Taemin will assist in teaching until they graduate. At that point, Cadet Ji-woo, you will be offered a position as a full instructor, the youngest in Academy history." The words took a moment to register. Instructor at the Galactic Military Academy, teaching warriors from across 200 species. Ji-woo bowed respectfully. "Thank you, but I must respectfully decline the instructor position." The arena erupted in shocked murmurs. Velsha's mandibles spread wide. "You decline? Why?" "Because I didn't come here to teach," Ji-woo said clearly. "I came here to fight. When I graduate, I want a combat assignment. I want to use what I know in real situations, not just training halls. The program will continue without me. Hyeon would make an excellent lead instructor, but my place is in the field." Velsha stared at her for a long moment. Then the massive Velcrum made a sound that was definitely a laugh. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "Perhaps both." She paused. "Very well. When you graduate, you will be assigned to a frontline reconnaissance unit. I will make sure of it." The months that followed changed the Academy. The close quarters combat program became one of the most popular electives, with waiting lists for enrollment. Students discovered that learning to fight without weapons made them better fighters with weapons as well. The confidence that came from knowing you could defend yourself even if disarmed was invaluable. Ji-woo watched the program grow, training new students alongside her friends. She saw Velcrum cadets and Orthane cadets sparring together, learning from each other, adapting techniques to their unique bodies. She saw the academy evolving, becoming something more than it had been. One evening, near the end of her first year, Ji-woo sat alone in the same dusty training room where she had practiced on her first night at the academy. She moved through the forms her grandmother had taught her, the movements flowing like water, each strike precise and controlled. When she finished, she found Velsha standing in the doorway, watching. "How long have you been there?" Ji-woo asked. "Long enough," the instructor replied. She entered the room, her heavy footsteps echoing. "I have been thinking about what you said during the duel. That humans are weak, so you learn to fight smart instead of strong. Yes? I think you were only half right. Humans are not weak. You are different. Your bodies are average. Your senses are unremarkable. Your lifespans are short. But you have something most species have forgotten. What's that? Adaptability, creativity, the willingness to learn from anyone and anything. Most species found one path and walked it forever. You humans look at every path and take pieces from all of them." Velsha's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "That is not weakness. That is a different kind of strength." Ji-woo thought about her grandmother, about all the masters who had contributed to the martial arts she practiced, about the centuries of humans learning and adapting and improving. "Maybe you're right. I'm always right," Velsha said with what might have been a smile. "It is why I am the instructor and you are the student." As Ji-woo's first year ended and her second began, the academy continued to change. More programs began incorporating hand-to-hand training. Tactical doctrine was updated to account for close-quarters situations. The galaxy's military forces started to remember what they had forgotten. And in quiet corners of stations and ships across the stars, soldiers from 100 different species practiced the techniques a young,